Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Steel City Resistance. My name is Hutch Jr., and I am located deep down in the bunker in the city of Pittsburgh. And now, activating the Southern Command live from Orlando, Florida. Mr. J, good evening, sir.
Good evening, and good evening to everybody watching. The Southern Command is armed and activated.
Yes, it is, and I am not having a good time with my controls this evening. I don't know how that happened, but we're going to figure it out uh, right about now. I hate when this happens. I was not prepared for that. I am not getting your audio in the proper place. And let's see here. Oh, goodness.
Well, we know you can get it there, Hutch.
I'm signing off and signing back in. So, Mr. J, if you would take the controls for 1 minute, I'll be right back.
Absolutely. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining the Steel City Resistance. And first off, I want to remind everybody that we also are on another Spreecast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with Wayne Dupree. You will find it in the live and upcoming section. We're part of the News and Engine Network as well, and we have really good numbers there, so be sure to check that out. Now, to get right into news, Colin Powell endorses single payer. This is an interesting turn of events. Now, he says that he wants all Americans to enjoy the same health care benefits that he has enjoyed. He wants a European like system here in the United States. Now, this is rather interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because um, Senator Bernie Sanders, Jim McDermott introduced legislation for states to set up their own single payer systems. So it's almost like the fix is in. They knew this was going to crap out, not work, fail, and they're already laying the foundations for a single payer system. And this kind of is what it looks like to me. And welcome back, Mr. Hutch Bailey, to the show.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Every now and then you'll have some difficulties. I knew better. I should have had something lined up, and I just got a little too cocky and didn't get in the studio early enough. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, but I have a quite able co-host who's able to handle these things, and it gets better with time. It does. Did we talk about Mr. Colin yet?
Yeah, we just talked about Mr. Colin, and I added that Bernie Sanders and Jim McDermott introduced legislation for the states to set up a single payer system. So, as I was saying before, it's like the fix was in. They knew.
Yeah, that was always my worst uh, assumption that this was all on purpose. Colin Powell, I'll tell you, I know you closed him out, but what a disappointment. I mean, really, this guy, he had so much potential. I never really, I always thought there was a little friction between Schwarzkopf and him. I think he wanted to take the old school approach, and Norman Schwarzkopf wanted to win. I was a little leery of him as Secretary of State, but I always had a feeling of confidence, at least a little bit. I knew he wasn't like a real conservative, but you figure for him to travel in those circles, he almost had to be. And then now that he's doesn't have any more national responsibility, he just becomes a complete lib.
I,
I mean, that's sad.
I think there's also some displaced feelings about him going up there to the UN and talking about all these centrifuges and this and that, and he kind of got thrown under the bus a little bit, I think. And I wonder if he's a little bit, that has something to do with it.
Yeah, it may. It certainly may. I think that history is going to show that all that stuff was there. I think that in our administration's fury to get to bury the truth. I think that's why they went over there and destroyed the chemical weapons in Syria. I think they're getting rid of all the evidence. I'd love to see pictures of that stuff. I'll bet you some of it's from Iraq, uh, but we'll never know. I'm sure, which is kind of sad. Uh, yeah, single payer. How about that? I'm telling you, it's there's some good news though. Right when you thought the government was just irreparable. We had this guy, the irritated genie, who I mean, threatened and fanned the flames of racial war and things right from the Department of Homeland Security. So I guess there's some good news after all, a year or so later.
Yes, this genie is out of the bottle, so to speak. He's been on paid leave since August. He just now got, well, they won't say if he was fired or he left on his own, but he's been getting paid all the way up till December 6th. So, this open and transparent administration is unable to give us the details of it, but, you
Imagine
wonder,
that.
no shame.
Now we got something going on in Arizona, and I'm not fully versed on the acronym, so I'm going to let you. We made a discovery there. They started looking at people's backgrounds, and I guess some anomalies came up in Arizona.
Yes, an Arizona law enforcement officer named Carmen Figueroa. Turns out she's an illegal alien. She's been working for the department for 10 years, and her status was only discovered when her brother um, he applied for a passport, and it came back, he's not a citizen. And furthermore, the brother is serving in the U.S. military. This went on a long time, and nobody, all this NSA, all this spying, they don't know anything apparently.
Now I'm not sure about. I know I witnessed a citizenship ceremony when I was overseas at one point, where they brought in members of all the four services they weren't citizens, but they were serving in the military. So I don't know if that's authorized, maybe, and that's a way. And actually, to me, that's a good way for illegals to get their status. If you want to put the uniform on, I mean, this was overseas. This wasn't at Fort Benning. They were overseas. So, I mean, I think that's an excellent gateway to citizenship myself. Maybe I'm misled, but I just kind of think it's a good way.
Well, to be true to the facts, Miss Figueroa has had an exemplary history with the force, and her brother claim that their parents told them that they were born here. So maybe they had no idea. It's kind of hard to believe, but
Even if it's true, the damning thing is that Homeland Security didn't catch it. I mean, that's supposed to be the entire purpose of these people, and for them to have non-citizens within their ranks, regardless of the service of the individual, you still have non-citizens in their ranks. That's the story there. I mean, this is about an incompetent organization apparently. Now Russia is woofing a little bit. One of the things that we learn throughout history is when we have an administration that postures itself as weakly as this one does. You can look back on past administrations. The Russian bear comes out of hibernation. It looks like that's indeed the case. Not just a Russian bear, but we got another story coming up that's from China. So this is something that's no joke.
yeah, President Putin is looking to relive the glory days of the Soviet Union. He's planning on opening up and rehabbing a bunch of military bases across the country and strengthen their position in the Arctic region. And they're saying that it's to protect shipping routes. Yeah, well, it's also about oil and gas. As we'll go on further with another story, but these people are feeling empowered, emboldened, and I really do believe that Putin really wants Russia to be a major player again. And he's stepping up the military presence in areas that they pretty much had abandoned, and it's
Everywhere.
interesting to watch.
Yeah, all around the world. I mean, everybody's emboldened. Everybody knows we're not going to do anything. We've got John Kerry out there who basically, to me, renounced his citizenship when he threw his medals over the White House fence. But we're just going to have to wait and see, and then hopefully America gets sober and we get rid of this guy and get rid of the people around him. It's never been just about Obama. Don't think that. I don't really care that much about Obama. The people that he's brought in, though, I mean, bringing John Podesta back, that's just a straight up communist from organizing for America or whatever it's called now, the BarackObama.com. Uh, but at least we have a staunch ally to our north because Canada is going to lay a claim to the North Pole. So we don't have anything to worry about. Canada has got our back, and Canada will stand up as the power in the region until we get sober. So that's always fun because you have this story. This next point is it's kind of a recycled story. I heard this a couple years ago, uh, but it's come back to light because of what they've done. There's some areas in southern Arizona on the border with Mexico that actually have signage up that tells American citizens not to go in because they don't. We basically ceded control of the area.
That's exactly right. And a local Pinal County sheriff said he admits we don't have control over these areas. We don't have enough people on the ground to patrol the areas. And he says he's getting little to no federal help. The federal government, is not offering any support of any kind to him. He says it's just really the way it is. You just need to stay out of those areas because he can't patrol them.
And Terry Jung from the chat room says the signs are actually in multiple languages, including Arabic. So that's comes back to something that we've covered in previous episodes about not just Mexicans coming across the border. I think that's something we really got to fix. I mean, it's getting to the point where uh, maybe we'll look into that next month or next week. We did a couple shows where we investigated what's some of the things that are going on south of the border, and not necessarily just in Mexico, but in Venezuela, some Iranian presence there, and I think Iran is pretty much the main global focus of where jihad is going to be coming from in the future, at least facilitating it. Now, I have to say, I've been watching this. I'm sure you have too. You can see throughout the ruling class, both in Congress and in the media, uh, some dividing lines are being set up. It started out with John Boehner and his snapping out at the outside groups. That's what we're being called now. I watched Fox News Sunday, and Chris Wallace kept on referring to outside groups that were influencing the establishment Republicratic leadership. And I really got offended at that. It's they're trying to ostracize conservatives and constitutionalists, and we need to be prepared for that and not let that take hold. Because I don't consider myself an outside group. I'm an American.
I agree. And, I don't know what they're thinking because, you know, us outside groups make up at least a third or more of the electorate. And they're going to, brush us off and then hope they can make up the difference somewhere in the middle. Well, I got news for them. Democrats aren't going to vote Republican. They never do.
No,
I mean, Reagan might have been an exception, but John Boehner is no Ronald Reagan. They're
you
making a
got
huge
that.
mistake, and what a way to anger, a big chunk of your electorate by saying something as ignorant as this. If he had something to say like this, it should have been behind closed doors.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's not doing very well. You've got Paul Ryan. His following is getting smaller by the day. I don't have a whole lot of use for Paul Ryan anymore. As far as I'm concerned, Paul Ryan equals John Boehner. I don't want to deal with him anymore. I just don't. Uh, that's another one. It's a wonder that these people. The only person that got close to the presidency that's still worth a damn is Sarah Palin. I mean, the rest of these people are all just horrible, man. It's unbelievable. I never liked Mitt Romney anyway. And you see Reince Priebus now. They're gonna try to mess with the rules on how we select our nominee, and all that is trying to push Jeb Bush in there, or Chris Christie, or some other dud that doesn't have a chance. And we're gonna have to really pay attention on these primaries coming up. I mean, uh, it's real bad. I mean, you've got McCain, you've got an entire Senate poised to fight against this ridiculous budget. And I know I've spoken out in the past about, let's just get it done. But when I see the entire Senate, uh, at first I had a little hope, and then I realized this is just show. I said it on the last show we were on the Wayne Dupree show, that this is going to pass, and it is. John McCain, Flake, Snow, and there's another senator that are going to vote for cloture, and then we'll just see what happens when the actual vote comes to the floor.
I agree, and it's it may be for the best. We've seen the them blow past the debt ceiling and everything. This is nothing new. They do it every single time. I think we just got to remain focused on healthcare and what's going on with that, and get this budget fight out of the way, because it doesn't seem to resonate with the general public. Um, Present company excluded from that, but the regular Joes out there that don't follow the news could care less about the budget. They just want their government open. So healthcare is
Agree.
the deal.
I'll tell you something. The story, yeah, healthcare and primaries. I'm going to start looking forward to these primaries, and we've got some people on our team that are actually getting down into the races, and they're going to provide us some information. I think that's something that's really going to be consequential for us going forward. Now, Alicia Smith just put something on the chat. I'll put it on there because I'm getting ready to talk about it anyway. It's good timing, Alicia. No question. Ted Cruz has done some really stellar things. I mean, for him to be in the Senate for such a short time, the actual rules of the Senate for hundreds of years have been keep your mouth shut until you've been in there a couple terms. And Ted Cruz just refused to comply with that, to his credit. He went out there and he just disregarded all the leadership on his own side and everything else. And Rasmussen did a poll, and Ted Cruz is the third most influential person in the world after the Pope and Barack Obama. A Rasmussen poll.
Yeah, that's something. But the man knows he's accountable to the people that elected him, and he knows why they sent him there. And at first, I heard all of his lines, and I thought, well, I hope these aren't just applause lines. But that's not the case. This guy lives it. He knows why he is there. He knows how he got there. And, he's one of the few that stand up. And I understand why he would make that list, because he's had a huge influence on government, whether you like him or not. He has.
Oh, definitely. It's really nice to see too, man. That's something that I like the guy a lot. You and I were lucky enough to get a chance to see him, and I hope that's the case in the future. I'd like to get an interview with him at some point, but we'll see what happens. Now, the next story before we get to some of the harder stuff is from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they had a Christmas parade. Of course, they called it a holiday parade, I imagine. But they had this Christmas parade, and the CARE and the Tulsa Muslims only want you to think they're marching for peace and harmony. But check out the balloon that they're carrying in this next clip. It can only mean one thing, and that's global Islamic caliphate. So let's take a minute and check this out. It's not very long. Uh, check it out. Check it out. Hey, you decide. That looked like some global stuff to me.
Yeah, I think that message was pretty clear to me. They want to take over the whole damn world. And they're supposedly talking about peace and global harmony. Those people, that's not what
I'll tell you.
yeah.
No, no, and we need to get a hold of this. We need to have this conversation. And Europe's just a mess. Almost every country in Europe is just a mess over there. I mean, they've got some things going on that are going to start happening here if we don't wake up.
Well,
And we have to get this politically correct madness ended.
Alicia, I think, was the one that posted on Facebook a story about the Muslims are, you know, telling the people they can't sell liquor or they'll face 40
Yeah,
lashes. I mean,
I saw
they're
that
taking
too.
over.
Ladies and gentlemen, your weekly Jihad Report, December 7th to December 13th. 53 Jihad attacks, down to 4 Allahu Akbars, 245 dead bodies, 419 suicide attacks. The religion of peace, ladies and gentlemen, one body at a time. So, this next story, ladies and gentlemen, is something that you won't see in the mainstream media because they just are living in their little fantasy land, and this has uh, no good points for them to forward their agenda. But in the Central African Republic, commonly known as the CAR, peacekeepers save Muslim group from violent crowd. There's been some conflict there, and as in every other country, when they reach a certain percentage of the population, the Muslims get very angry and they start cutting people's heads off, and you know how it is. And in this situation here, France, because they understand what's going on, sent some peacekeepers there, some soldiers, several who have been killed. Uh, Regional peacekeepers fire their guns as they evacuate Muslim clerics from the St. Jacques Church in Bangui. African peacekeepers were forced to intervene in the CAR on Thursday to disperse a crowd waiting to attack a group of Muslims who had taken refuge in a church compound. Several thousand people stood by on Thursday as a group of men threw large rocks trying to break into the compound of the St. Jacques Church in Bangui. They were looking for an ex-rebel general that they believed to be inside, and they were chanting, "Kill him! Kill him!" He's attacked everyone and is responsible for many abuses here in Bangui, said Johnny Clevar, 18, as he and his friends stood near the entrance to the church. We want to kill him. So this crowd was getting pretty irate. But isn't it ironic that they were seeking refuge in a church?
It is ironic, and you know, why did they even? Why did the French get involved? They were just Muslim clerics, weren't they?
I guess. But some of the suspected, they call them Salikas, the Muslims. Some of the suspected Salika members have come under increasing threat in Bangui since bloodshed started in the capital on the 5th of December. Earlier this week, a crowd stoned to death a suspected Salika member in front of his house and then set his two cars on fire as onlookers watched. Two French soldiers were killed earlier this week when they came under attack from gunmen near the city's airport. There's an estimated 3 to 8,000 armed militia members belonging to diverse alliances in Bangui. Most have abided by calls by the French and African forces to hand in their weapons or return to their barracks, said a French military spokesman. I guess the number of weapons has dropped significantly. Um, but the main reason I wanted to bring it to the audience is because it's not in the American media. The American media just dismisses so many things until they're out of control. I mean, is um, the Ukraine even in the media at all? I haven't seen it.
No, and it looks like some there's this is another story we did last week. Some of these nations in Africa are getting mighty tired of the Islamic influence and what they're doing in their countries, and this is interesting in the fact that you're right; it's not reported, and I think it's just a cause and effect. I mean, and these people apparently are tired of being pushed around.
And I'll tell you, I'm going to risk being called a name, and I don't really care. But if you think about it, across the globe, if you look at the countries where these people live, they're all angry and they hate it. So they go to other countries and they try to turn them into countries where they're angry and they hate it. I mean, at some point in time, this is like Nazi Germany. You know, Nazi Germany rolls in and they're not compatible with any place they rolled into. That's the same thing that these Muslims are doing. You know, at some point in time, a crusade is going to be called for. And you can say what you want about that, but just keep your eyes on Europe. That's all I got to say. You watch Europe, you watch England, and you watch France, and you're going to see your future if we don't stop this. I mean, this is a plan that has been going on for hundreds of years, uh, and they're executing it. That's all they're doing. I mean, it's clear what's going on. Now, what we mentioned at the beginning. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And, these people in Europe, if they have any vestiges of any remembrance of what freedom is, they'll eventually rise up and fight this. And, right now, I think I'm seeing some of these people that are rising up against this being called neo Nazis, or
Yeah,
skinheads or white supremacists. I mean, I think they got it a little wrong here, but um, you know, it's coming to the United States.
yeah, it is, and it needs to again. They're doing everything they can to weaken Christianity. The clergy in the United States is pitiful. The clergy in the United States has just dropped to such a low that you can't even call them. They might as well not even be representing their church, because the Christians are getting murdered all over the world, and they don't say a damn word. It makes me sick. Uh, I mean, they should be at the forefront of this. They should be on television. They should be in print. You know, they should be on the radio. This is just horrible. It's embarrassing. It really is. It's like World War II all over again with the Jewish people. We didn't say a word about that. It makes me nauseous. It really does. Now the uh, another serious thing that's going on here is in China. There was a recent um, confrontation, if you will, and I don't know if this was on the news either because I just don't watch that much of the news anymore. But a Chinese naval vessel tries to force a U.S. warship to stop in international waters.
How about that? The U.S. guided missile warship um, was in a tense standoff with the Chinese maritime. And the guided missile cruiser was the USS Cowpens, which recently took part in disaster relief operations in the Philippines, was confronted by Chinese warships in the South China Sea near Beijing's new aircraft carrier. I'm not even going to pronounce it. On December 5th, while lawfully operating in international waters in the South China Sea, the USS Cowpens and a PLA Navy vessel had an encounter that required maneuvering to avoid a collision. And it seems like I remember a EP plane incident a few years back, and it just seems like they're stepping it up a little bit here in the South China Sea.
Sure, and we've reported on that previously. This is going to be the new hotspot when it comes to Asia, and it's not just going to be Japan and China. South Korea is going to get into it. You know, they say their new aircraft carrier that they bought used, by the way. But nevertheless, it is an aircraft carrier. Yeah, I don't know. We're going to have to watch this closely. And there's a detailed report on this uh, in the show notes links on steelcityresistance.blogspot.com. This is episode 151, but you can go in there and see what General Martin Dempsey had to say. And China's military forces in recent days have dispatched Su-30 and J-11 fighter jets, as well as KJ-2000 airborne warning and control aircraft, that's similar to our AWACS, to the zone to monitor the airspace that is used frequently by U.S. and Japanese military surveillance aircraft. So you can just look at that and imagine what could possibly go wrong there. Who knows? One little mistake, uh, and you don't know what's going to happen. That's the problem with these things. You can't determine the outcome once one of these encounters starts.
I,
This encounter appear. Go ahead.
I would just add that back in June, a U.S. intelligence gathering ship, the USNS Impeccable, came under Chinese naval harassment from a China maritime surveillance ship, part of Beijing's quasi-military maritime patrol craft. And there's been other ships that have been harassed. So it seems to be escalating in the region.
It does, and their CNN News brings up a good point that China and Russia have both started to prod us with a little bit. He says, just wait until we lose reserve status, bigger than a couple of ships, and there's no question about that. The day that happens is the day everything changes. And what he's talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the U.S. dollar is used as the world's reserve currency, and that's the only reason that we're still floating. And it's actually something that is painful to a whole lot of other nations. The shenanigans that our Fed is doing is committing, and not just the Fed, but the whole Paul Ryan budget and the whole 9 yards of not getting serious about this thing uh, is affecting other countries, not just us, and they're getting pissed off, and they deserve to be pissed off. That being said, I'm still on our side, and to be or not to be says hum wum dong.
Well,
So anyway, go to the show notes page. That's about a 5-page article. Uh, and there's something else that was left out of the news, so to speak, and that was you got the attack on the school. They had to come up with that. They got a little quiet on it as soon as I found out that the shooter was a socialist, a Keynesian and everything. But you didn't hear a whole lot about the Wichita airport Muslim suicide bomber. So that's something that's kind of interesting. So we're going to show you a little bit about it right here. And I'm going to, for the radio audience, I'm going to narrate the first 20 seconds or so, just because there's no audio. So check this out. Well, I can tell you. So that was a little different. My original version of that YouTube had 26 seconds of text. Before that, we must have some smart video filters on Spreecast or something going on here. I don't know. That kind of
Terry
caught me a little off guard.
Terry in the chat points out something. No such thing as self-radicalized. They are taught it in the mosques. Uh,
All true.
that statement that they made about being self-radicalized, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, what he was looking at was put out there to radicalize. It wasn't something that you know he just woke up one day and decided he was going to do. I mean, they're targeting people to radicalize.
Absolutely. And you can go on the show notes links page, and there's a link to read his conversations with the undercover FBI agent. You can check that out and decide for yourself. But again, the reason that I brought this on the show is because it's not, it's nowhere. I mean, to me, that's an important story. And the only way that you can get any kind of information on these stories is like this one from the people that it affects, the local media. Those are about the only people holding up the fort here.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that they don't want to put Muslims in a bad light. And then, when they had the story about the school shooting, they were more than happy to get onto that one so they wouldn't have to talk about this one.
Agreed. Now you've got CNN News saying study the Quran, the Hadith, understand Islam, and you'll see the slow, deliberate creeping. And that's true. And you can go to the reading room or the learning room, I forget what it's called, the research room. It's one of the pages on my website, on our website, that has very good links to all three of those texts and several courses that you can take concerning Islam in America, the Islamic infiltration of the Republican Party. Thanks to Grover Norquist, had a big hand in that. A lot of conservatives' hero, not mine. Um, so anyway, there's a lot of information there. Now, one of the fun parts of this job is watching our opposition and just how ridiculous they are. One of my favorite people like that is Sergeant Schultz. I mean, Ed Schultz at MSNBC has got to be the goofiest guy that's on the air right now. I mean, he's right up there with Sharpton.
Yeah, a Department of Labor search shows that not only is liberal MSNBC host Ed Schultz paid for his TV show on the radio show, but he also getting a hefty amount of money from labor unions. Schultz received at least 177,000 from labor unions in 2012. The average median income for an American family is around 44,000. This year alone, the DOL show Schultz has been paid 75,000 by the AFL-CIO. Just yesterday, the AFL-CIO Richard Trumpka appeared on the Ed Show. As we ring in the new year, in just a couple of weeks, we will keep track of how much union pay there is for Ed Schultz. And
So MSNBC is basically a whorehouse. That's what they are. If you pay them, they'll let you come and use their services, and that makes Ed Schultz a prostitute, basically. But there's a good itemized breakdown of Ed Schultz's uh, pairing up with the unions, and he is a designee number, and he gets different amounts of funding, and well, that didn't come out too good on the viewing, but at any rate, you can go to the link at the bottom of the story, and it shows the entire chart that shows the amounts too. These amounts were taken; they were knocked off when I transposed this onto the show notes. But there, like I said, there's a link that takes you right to the story, and you can check them out. I mean, this guy's he got a lot of money from a lot of different places, and to me, MSNBC loses all credibility. Not a news organization. This is a Democratic organization, Democrat Party, leftist organization, and in my opinion, the TV towers ought to be torn down. It's something that either that or it ought to be relabeled as something else. It should not be legal for this organization to be labeled as a news industry, a news operation. It's just this is too far past the Constitution. I'm sorry.
you're exactly right. I mean, this guy is a whore. That network is a whorehouse. We wonder why these people say and do the things that they do. Well, they're just doing what they're paid to do, and this is pay from outside interest groups. And Soros is another one. Some of his groups are also funding Mr. Schultz as well. And another report came about Mr. Schultz here about him and his private jets. It just came out today. Apparently, he rails about how bad corporate private jets are, and he's got several of them himself. But you know, he gets the money from who.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of the money, any money that's coming from the unions, the biggest unions are the public sector unions. So that's taxpayer money. This is a big game of three-card money. I mean, where's the money going? It's all the same money. You're paying for it yourself, a lot of that, and it's just a good thing that the internet allowed shows like ours and others, bigger than us, to be able to come out here and put these things out because, wow, the media sure isn't doing it. I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but it's a shame. I'm expecting some more entities to show up like the Blaze. I mean, we talked about that before, and I guess that's the way to go for right now.
I would say, these shows on MSNBC, if they didn't have all this extra money coming in on the side, these things wouldn't stand on their own weight. I mean, they wouldn't be on the air. I think, this outside money is keeping these guys afloat.
Yeah, I mean, and they've proven that with what, Air America and all these other entities that went belly up that weren't worth a darn. I mean, they just can't. They're not sustainable. Nobody's going to buy it. Their product sucks, and that it's just true. So that's the only way they're gonna survive. Now, there's some congressmen that have had enough. About 30 of them in the House, and they've drafted a resolution calling for civil action against the president. And some of them, Tom Rice of South Carolina, a Republican, is sponsoring a resolution in the House of Representatives that would, if adopted, direct the legislative body to bring a civil action for declaratory or injunctive results or relief to challenge certain policies and actions taken by the executive branch. In other words, Representative Rice wants to take President Obama to court for not faithfully executing the laws. President Obama has adopted a practice of picking and choosing which laws he wants to enforce. In most cases, his laws of choice conveniently coincide with his administration's political agenda. Our founding fathers created the executive branch to implement and enforce the laws written by Congress and vested this power in the president. However, President Obama has chosen to ignore some of the laws written by Congress and implemented by preceding presidents. Rice wrote in a letter to fellow House members to ask them to co-sponsor the resolution. This resolution allows the House of Representatives to bring legal action against the executive branch and challenge recent actions, inactions, and policies. Now, I have to say to Representative Rice, uh, I applaud this because if they don't do something soon, this was one of my arguments, not in support of the Ryan budget, but in support of let's get a budget, because if we don't, the Congress cedes that authority to the executive branch. If you're working on a continuing resolution, you are allowing the president to set the spending for the nation, and that's unacceptable. And if Congress becomes totally neutered, they're already neutered. I mean, if you look at it, if we look at what's happened in Congress, we have a sitting attorney general that has been held in contempt of Congress, and it means nothing.
You're exactly right, and we've talked about this many times on the show. How Congress itself has basically given their powers to the president, and the president has been more than happy to take on that responsibility. And it goes even further with the EPA regulations. I mean, these guys are not accountable to Congress. They do whatever they want, and there's really nothing to stop them. I mean, the courts are you know, oftentimes siding with, the president's agenda anymore. And, you know, I applaud this bill, but, at the same time, Congress needs to get their power back, and they need to, handle their responsibility and quit giving their responsibilities to the executive branch.
And I'm looking for the bill number, Terry, but it starts to describe it as a resolution. Thus, the resolution calls for civil action. One, the policy of Department HHS that with respect to health insurance coverage that is renewed for a policy year during a period beginning January 1 and ending October 1, 2014, health insurance issuers may continue to offer coverage that would otherwise be terminated or canceled for being out of compliance with various requirements of Title 27 of the, that was Roman numerals too, ladies and gentlemen, that was some quick thinking, of the Public Health Service Act and corresponding portions of the Employee Retirement Income Security Act and the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as announced by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services on November 14, 2013. Two, the 1 year delay in the application of the reporting requirements of section da 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 da. And there's four different points, and then it's further translated in plain English what the actual bill is, and it also lays out all of the other 29 congressmen that are signed on to it. And I'll just name a couple: Michelle Bachmann, Bridenstine, Jason Chaffetz, Duncan DeSantis, Franks, Gowdy, Harris, Lamborn, LaMalfa, Marino, PA, McClintock, Meadows, Nunnally, Pittenger, Posey, Stewart, Stockman, Wahlberg, Weber, Wenstrup, Williams, Joe Wilson, and Yoho. So it's got a lot of names behind it. It should have more, but that's a very long and detailed article too. So I would suggest that you go check that out.
It's got Joe Wilson. That's important.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Now this next story is something that's kind of personal to us, Mr. J. This is something that I came across earlier in the week, and it's kind of funny in a way. I mean, Media Matters, which is basically a White House tool. I mean, this is the organization that brags that they basically write the storyline for MSNBC and other networks. But they've said that they, well, let me go first. First matters first. Uh, about a month ago, I lifted the ban on Infowars.com. We had a ban on that organization. Anything that came from there was not permitted on the program. And I started actually following this website, this operation, and I realized that uh, this was an operation that was the only site that had several stories that I knew to be true. And I quickly realized that me shutting them down is not the most intelligent thing to do, because you could vet these stories. And this is the only place that I found this story, and this is easy to vet. They use their own words. First of all, Media Matters has determined or declared that they won the war with the Fox News channel. And I just find that completely comical.
I'm wondering if they're, you know, smoking and drinking tiger's blood, because if that's what they call winning, it's very reminiscent of another winner, so to speak. I mean,
You're sharp,
they
man.
haven't won anything. It's hilarious. I think they just surrendered, basically.
Yeah, I mean, claiming that the war with Fox News is over and that to a large extent we won, despite polls showing Americans trust Fox News over any other mainstream media network, Media Matters has finalized a blueprint which outlines a shift to focus on Steel City resistance and new, increasingly influential targets, including Spanish language media, social media streams, alternative online outlets, and morning and entertainment sources. In other words, Media Matters, whose employees brag about writing MSNBC's primetime content and attending strategy calls with Obama advisors on a weekly basis, will now turn its big guns on the likes of InfoWars, Alex Jones, The Drudge Report, and Steel City Resistance.
It's funny because, you know, the Drudge Report is nothing but a news link aggregator. I mean, they're not a news organization, so to speak. I don't know what they can do other than, you know, hey, that link you got ain't no good. It looks like a bogus link or whatever. But I mean, they just
Yeah.
aggregate links. But, you know, they can go after Alex Jones. He already knows they're coming anyway if you listen to him at any length of time. But hey, bring it on. We'll have a debate. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't hurt me
I mean,
financially any more than, you know, the economy already has. So whatever.
and just for the uh, history books, I just added our name in there naturally. I don't want to plagiarize anything or anything like that, but Media Matters' decision in concert with the White House to shift focus on entertainment sources is also an admission of defeat. Tactically acknowledging their failure to influence Americans via traditional means, Media Matters and the Obama administration have abandoned political avenues in favor of targeting entertainment obsessed zombies who get their opinions from the likes of Kanye West and Beyonce, attempting to brand White House policies as trendy and cool, just as Obama himself was just a manufactured brand. So, I agree with that. I think that's what they're doing, and I think, that's a good way to capture stupid people. It is what it is, but they've been doing that for years. That's nothing new. I mean, that's why you have Costas on ESPN talking about gun control, and you have this big thing with the Washington Redskins name. That's all just a shift, trying to shift uh, news to the sports and entertainment industry.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, they're looking to pick easier targets at Media Manners. They're looking for soft targets, but we don't have sponsors, so you're not going to get the Florida Orange Juice board to turn us down or drop us. I mean,
No, this is what you call a deficit podcast.
so I think they're wasting their time. But I guess when you they've been fighting Fox News for such a long time and constantly losing. I guess they got to try to pick a softer target, and that's where we come in, I guess. But whatever, we're ready.
Yeah, that's true. I don't care about them either. The next article is called "A Government Separated from the People Cannot Stand." Uh, in his 1952 book, The Origins of Totalitarian Democracy, Israeli historian J.L. Tallman described a political system in which lawfully elected representatives rule a nation state whose citizens, although granted the right to vote, have little or no participation in the decision-making process of government. And I think our government has become such a system. And due to time constraints, I'm going to direct you to the show notes links page to check that out. It's rather lengthy, uh, but it is a good read. We just get like that here. I get long winded or whatever. We run out of time. But that's a very good article and relevant, I think, to what's going on these days.
It is a good article. I would encourage everybody to check it out. And boy, does it tell about the way things are right now.
The United States is now controlled by a Democratic and Republican ruling class that transcends government and sees itself as distinct from the rest of society and as the only element that may act on its behalf. The ruling class considers those who resist it as having no moral or intellectual right and only reluctantly any civil right to do so. How true is that? So that's your teaser to go check that out. And on a final note here, the EPA. I don't understand why this story, Mr. J. I don't. I'm trying to figure out why they ran it because I don't believe in their benevolence. I'm just trying to see what the ulterior motive is. But they have admitted something that we've all known for years, that the ethanol mandate has become unrealistic.
Yes, a top Environmental Protection Agency official admitted in front of Congress that the federal ethanol blending mandate has put undue requirements on oil companies. We recognizing that the blend wall has been reached, the head of the EPA Transportation Office said. Reaching the blend wall clearly presents constraints to using higher ethanol quantities because of the infrastructure and other marketing limitations. But the RFS requires that refiners blend 36 billion gallons of renewable fuels into the fuel supply by 2022. The main ethanol used to meet the demand comes from corn, which has driven up food prices and fuel prices as more of the country's crop is diverted to ethanol production. But the interesting thing about this is that they can't put any more ethanol into the fuels because it damages engines. Now, any of us
Yep.
that have any power tools out in the shed know what kind of damage this fuel does to engines. And they say they hit the wall. I say the wall was hit a long time ago, but um, it is strange that this story comes out like this.
I always thought it was arrogant for us to burn our food supply in our cars or in anything. I always thought that was just something that we even did a story that ethanol production, in essence, helped escalate the Arab Spring. That started out being something that they were paying such a large percentage for food for their families, they couldn't buy anything else, and a lot of it had to do with that. But anyway, we've got some things going on. Mr. J and I do. We're both panelists on the Wayne Dupree Show. You can catch us every Tuesday to Friday now from 8 to 9. That's become a regular show with a very big following. Most of you that are watching this also catch that. That's another time to catch us. Mr. J, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you put out your information, and then we'll get on out of here pretty soon.
All right. Thanks, Hutch, and thank you to our loyal viewers. We're glad you're here. You can always find me at Chris Ivan at Facebook or at MRJA USA at Facebook, Twitter, and Tea Party Community. And you can click my little icon here and follow me here at Spreecast so I can get to 100. And we thank you, and we will see you Tuesday night on the Wayne Dupree Show for sure.
Well, thank you, Mr. J, and I'm now going to place the Southern Command back on reserve status. We appreciate all the work that you do for the show. And I don't even know how many followers I have. Where is that? I've probably got about 3. But anyway, at any rate, you can catch the show at steelcityresistance.blogspot.com. You can email the show, scrtv@live.com, if you have anything that you'd like to see us cover. We'll take it into consideration. I'd like to thank Paul, to be or not to be, Hey, Leisha Smith, another one, that's a new one, welcome, sir. Scott Smallwood, Terry Jung, and an unidentified visitor. Get a Spreecast account and get your name hooked up there. You can interact a little bit. I don't even think visitors can chat, but I'm not sure. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for allowing us into your life for an hour. It's very special to us, and I will report that the radio audience has bounced back. So that was only a little. Every now and then we have a slow week, and I just want to make sure it's not a trend. You could really help the program, radio and television. You can subscribe for free to Surrounded in Pittsburgh, Steel City Resistance. That's the way the show started out. 2 guys from Pittsburgh, but one guy retired, Ward retired, so we had to branch out a little bit, decided to keep the name. But on iTunes, you can subscribe for free. Surrounded in Pittsburgh, Steel City Resistance. Also on Stitcher, also on Blueberry and Roku and everywhere else. But anyway, thanks again. We appreciate it. Please tell your friends about the program. The only thing that keeps us going, as you heard during the show, this is a deficit podcast. We don't get paid for this. The only thing that keeps us going is your interaction and downloads. The downloads dry up, the show goes away. So anyway, thank you. I don't see that happening. I appreciate a lot of it's because of the Spreecast audience. God bless you, and we will certainly catch you next week. See ya.